welcome once again to Reasonable Faith. I'm Ethan Brown, and I'm leading you in this study of logical and philosophical arguments for faith in God. Today, we're going to take a look at the argument from desire. Before we get into the argument from desire, I want to point out that we are today beginning a new section in this class, in that we are moving away from cosmological arguments and into psychological arguments. Remember that a cosmological argument is one that looks at the cosmos, looks at the world around us and says, does this suggest that God exists? Is it reasonable to believe, based on the nature of the universe that we live in, that it was designed and created by a divine creature? That's a cosmological argument. But what we're looking at now, and will be for the remainder of the study for the most part, is what can be called psychological arguments. And rather than looking at the universe, we look at one particular part of the universe, and that's at our own minds. The human being can look out and say, is there reason based on the world around me to believe in God? We can also look in and look at our own nature and the nature of our own experiences and say, based on what I see within myself, is there anything there that suggests that there is a God? Human beings are different from all other animals, that we share with all other animals biological reality. You know, if you are dealing with a mammal, they're going to have a heart and lungs and a liver. And guess what you have? You also have heart, lungs, liver. Animals are mortal creatures. They're born, they grow and flourish, they decay, and then they deteriorate, and then they die. Human beings share that with the animal world, that we also are born and grow and flourish and then deteriorate and eventually die. We are very similar to animals in a lot of ways, but there's one thing that makes us very different. Before we get into that psychological difference, I want to point out a few psychological realities that we share with animals. Because animals can be demonstrated to have an awful lot of things that push toward the thing that we're talking about in human nature that really does make us different. Animals can be demonstrated to have an emotional life. If an elephant, for instance, were to lose a calf, that elephant will grieve maybe up to like a year over the loss of its child. Crows have been demonstrated to solve really complex problems. In order to get at food, maybe they have to unlock several locks. They can totally do it. I mean, they can drop pebbles into a container filled with water to bring the water level up so they can drink it. Sure, that's impressive. They can unlock locks. Dolphins have demonstrated a use of sound that appears to approach language. I don't know if it gets all the way there, but then I don't speak dolphin, so I don't know. But the use of sound that appears to communicate. There's an impressive... Ants are remarkable architects. They build really stunning structures. Here's a model of an abandoned ant mound. Really impressive. And yet, for all of the wonder of the animal kingdom, you can look all over the world, and you will not find among the animals a single William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare is this profound thinker who wrestles with things like, is life worth living, or what is love, or what value is there in villainy, and all kinds of really complex questions. Even wrestles a good bit with the concept of God. But the important thing is, William is a poet and an artist, and you may find an elephant or a raccoon or something that makes rudimentary art, but there is nowhere anything approaching the elegance and the power of a William Shakespeare in the animal kingdom. What is it that makes William different from, say, a finger painting raccoon? Why is his art of a different quality and kind? Well, it's reflective of a different kind of mind. The human mind is very different. To our knowledge, we are the only creatures with the ability to think abstractly. That concept of separating a quality out and looking at it. We are the only creatures, to our knowledge, again, with an awareness of time such that we can think historically. We can think about the world prior to our existence and what the world would be like without us. That's the other side. That we can think about what the world will be like without us. We can think of both future and past. We can think in terms of eternity. We can conceptualize and wrestle with, does it make sense to think of an eternal past? And in this class, we've come to the conclusion that it doesn't. But even considering it is something that human beings are unique in the biological world and in our ability to do. No creature uses complex language and conceptual thought the way that human beings do. When we enter into the realm of psychological arguments for God, we're entering into this unique human nature. Aristotle would reflect on it, and he would call human beings the rational animal or the reasoning animal. And he says that we are animals. Like every other animal, we have animal nature. But we alone are reasoning, our specific difference, the thing that makes us uniquely what we are in the animal world, is that we engage in reasoning. It is our psychology that makes us different. Therefore, when we explore psychological reasons to believe in God, we are in fact looking at something unique in this cosmos. At least to our knowledge, we've never encountered animals that write poetry. We've never encountered animals that engage in philosophy. We're unique that way. So, exploring the human psyche is exploring one unique aspect of the cosmos, and it's the one into which we can look with greater certainty than really we can look at anything else, because when we look at these, we really are exploring ourselves. Now, the argument from desire begins with the reality that human beings desire things. We are capable of reasoning, we really are, but we act based on our desires. It is our loves that push us more than anything else, our desires that motivate us into motion. We may think a thing is right, but when we see that it is desirable, we get in motion. We have certain desires innately. We don't have to produce them. In fact, we can't decide not to have them. We don't decide to have innate desires, and we cannot escape or avoid innate desires. And we can master them. We cannot give them expression, but they are with us. Those things, those innate desires. An innate desire or a real desire is different from a produced desire or an artificial desire, in that we don't need to be convinced that we desire the object. There are all kinds of things that we desire that aren't necessarily real just because we want them. But those things are things into which we need to be convinced that, yeah, having that would be good. I wish to have that. Like, for instance, a sports car. You might be convinced that that's a good way to spend your life. Do whatever it takes to get that vehicle. Or when I was growing up, I collected comic books. And in a lot of the comic books from the 90s, you'd see these advertisements for X-ray glasses. Now, folks, those weren't real. They weren't. They don't work. Why? Because they're made of cardboard. I'm not going into how I know that. No, I'm kidding. I never bought a pair of X-ray glasses. But because I knew those are not real. There is no way there's such a thing as a pair of glasses. There may be a toy that I can put on and pretend to be able to see through things, but that's not a real thing. But the advertisement was designed to try to get me to want it. And even though it wasn't real, it was pretty compelling when I was, 12 or 9. Um, I also saw a lot of advertisements for sea monkeys, and it turns out that those things are both real and not real. A sea monkey is a kind of shrimp. It is not a sea monkey, and they don't put bows in their head or have those tails or whatever you see in that picture right there. But and I did actually get sea monkeys. They were amazing. A dried powdered thing that when you added it to water, it actually did come to life. It was pretty cool. But I didn't know I wanted that. When I was an infant, I didn't know I wanted that. When I was 5, I had to be convinced that I wanted that. By contrast to things that I need to be convinced to want, there are all kinds of things that I'm just kind of born innately wanting. Things that I desire, and I don't decide to desire them. I just do. Things like food. You're born with the need to eat. Your body gets uncomfortable if you don't eat, and you know you want it. And sure enough, there is such a thing as food. There is a desire for romance and romantic love and physical intimacy and reproduction. Those are all drives inside the human being. And sure enough, there is such a thing as sexuality. There's a real desire, an innate desire. You don't decide whether you want that or not. You just have that desire. And then, yes, that is in fact a real thing. Or I want a group of people to help me understand who I am. And yeah, there's such a thing as family and community. Or I may have a desire for peace, especially if I feel like life is too hectic. I may long after peace. And sure enough, tranquility is a real thing that can be sought. I have a longing for companionship, and there are friends. And I have curiosity. I want to learn. I want my mind to grow and expand and stretch. And sure enough, there's such a thing as study. These are all innately real desires for real things. And those things that are real desires, innate desires, every single one of them is connected to a real good. The things that you don't decide whether or not you're going to desire it, you just do. All those things that we innately want are real things. Every single one. We do not innately desire unreal things. You may have at some point in your life been convinced that there was such a thing as a unicorn or a hippogriff or a Pegasus or whatever, and you may have desired that. You may have desired superpowers or something. But those things didn't come to you by virtue of your human existence. They came to you because you encountered them in fiction and you were like, wouldn't it be neat if that was real? Boy, I really want that. Okay? That's the difference between an innate desire and an artificial or a produced desire. And all of the innate desires, every single one, is for real goods, with one potential exception, and that is what many philosophers and writers will write about and call the unfulfilled desire. There is this longing in the human heart that reaches out and seeks after a good that seems to be unfindable in this world. That all of the goods that we seek and all the things that we desire, if we can fulfill those things, at the end of them, we find that there's still something we long for, and it's not satisfied. We want something ultimate, perfect, and satisfactory at the level of love and meaning. That's why a person can become very, very rich and find that they are in fact very depressed. Why? Because even though they're able to satisfy all of their wants, there is a desire that remains unsatisfied, a longing for that which they cannot have. The desire for which nothing in this world can satisfy is a desire for something, and this is just logical reasoning here. It's a desire for something beyond this world. And the uber rich are often either settling or depressed or perhaps become religious or make religious convictions and drive the desire out. But they can satisfy every desire that they want, and yet they find that there is still this remaining unsatisfied desire, and that the next trinket will bring it satisfaction, and it doesn't. Well, that suggests that there's nothing in this world that can really satisfy it. That there is a desire in us that longs for something more than this world can deliver. If all our other innate desires are for things that are real, why should this one unsatisfied and unsatisfiable innate desire be for that which is false? And that's the argument in a single sentence right there. The argument for desire says, human desires that are innate are all for real goods. There is an innate desire for meaning and love and perfection and beauty that seems to go unsatisfied or incompletely satisfied here. You may encounter something that seems like an echo of the thing that you really want, that points beyond itself to something better. But there's always this, not quite, to that desire. Why should that desire be for that which is false? If the unsatisfied desire is like all our other innate desires, it's a desire for something real. And the argument from desire says, what we're longing for is God. Let's go ahead and close with a word of prayer. God, you have made us wonderfully, and you have made us to rest in yourself, and our hearts are restless until we rest in you. Pray that you would lead us to yourself and satisfy our desires. For God, we want to love you and be loved by you. Please lead us near to you. Thank you for Jesus. Please send him soon. It's in his name that we pray. Amen.